Have you ever noticed how easily it slips out of your mouth? That sigh, that muttered phrase, that tiny dagger disguised as words. Why does this always happen to me? Of course, nothing ever works out. People are impossible. It feels harmless. Sometimes it even feels justified. But what if I told you that every single complaint you utter is quietly reshaping your mind, your body, and your very destiny? This is the uncomfortable truth. The words you speak are not just sounds, they are seeds, and every complaint you plant takes root, grows, and begins to shape the landscape of your life. Let's pause here. Think of the last time you complained. Maybe it was about traffic, or your job, or the endless frustrations of dealing with other people. For a moment it felt like release, didn't it? A way to push the frustration out of your chest and into the world. But have you noticed what happens afterward? You don't feel lighter, you feel heavier. The frustration echoes. It lingers. It multiplies. Why? Because complaining is not just the expression of dissatisfaction. It is the practice of it. Every time you complain, you are rehearsing negativity, teaching your mind to find fault, to resist reality, and to expect disappointment. 2,000 years ago, the philosopher Epictetus warned, "It is not things themselves that disturb us, but our opinions about them." Complaining is precisely this, an opinion solidified into speech, a refusal to accept what is, and the more we refuse, the more we suffer. But modern psychology confirms what the Stoics intuited long ago. Neuroscientists tell us that the brain is like wet clay. It reshapes itself according to the thoughts and words we repeat. This is neuroplasticity. If you constantly complain, you literally wire your brain to see life through the lens of dissatisfaction. Imagine wearing glasses that tint the world grey. You forget the glasses are even there. You just assume the world is grey. This is what complaining does. It turns life into a prison of your own perception. But here's the twist. Complaining doesn't just poison your mind. It poisons your body. When you complain, your brain triggers the amygdala, the ancient alarm system responsible for fear and danger. That alarm floods your body with cortisol, the stress hormone. In emergencies, cortisol keeps us alive, but in daily life, when dripping endlessly from every complaint, it slowly corrodes us. High cortisol weakens the immune system, raises blood pressure, disrupts sleep, and accelerates aging. In other words, the more you complain, the faster you die. This is not exaggeration. It is biology. Still, maybe you think, but surely complaining is natural. Everyone does it. How harmful can it really be? Let me tell you a story. During World War II, the theologian Dietrich Bonhoeffer observed something in the Nazi regime, not just in the leaders, but in the ordinary people who followed them. It wasn't just ideology that corrupted them. It was the atmosphere they created among themselves, constant grumbling, constant resentment, a collective chorus of complaint that reality was unfair, that they had been humiliated, that the world owed them something. This atmosphere became fertile ground for hatred. What began as words grew into actions, and what began as complaints ended in catastrophe. Bonhoeffer called it the spirit of resentment, a sickness of the soul. This is the hidden danger of complaining. It doesn't stay small, it grows. Friedrich Nietzsche, perhaps more than any other philosopher, understood this danger. He saw how societies, rather than confronting suffering with courage, often drown themselves in bitterness. Nietzsche warned that resentment, when nurtured, becomes a slave morality, a worldview that feeds on blaming others, on envying, on constantly declaring, "This should not be." He wrote, "The spirit of resentment does not seek its own remedy, but seeks instead to poison the wells of life. That poison often begins with something small, the daily complaint. And yet, here's the most terrifying part. Complaining is contagious. Think about it. When one person begins to grumble in a room, others soon join in. A spark becomes a fire. One complaint sets the tone for an entire group, an entire workplace, even an entire culture. Psychologists call this emotional contagion. Your words infect the emotional state of others. Your complaints don't just live in your mind, they ripple outward, reshaping the energy of everyone around you. So the truth is, this complaining is not harmless. It is an act of creation. But instead of creating solutions, it creates more problems. But here's something even more unsettling. Most of us complain, not because we want change, but because we crave validation. Think about it. When you complain to a friend, you're rarely asking them to fix the situation. What you truly want is for them to mirror your frustration, to say, yes, you're right, life is unfair. In that moment, complaining becomes a way to escape responsibility. It feels easier to grumble than to act, easier to dwell in dissatisfaction than to take the difficult step of creating change. Philosopher Søren Kierkegaard once observed that despair is not the suffering itself, but the refusal to become oneself. Complaining is a subtle form of this despair. It keeps us locked in passivity, repeating the same stories, the same defeats, rather than facing the frightening truth that much of our life depends on the choices we make. In other words, complaining is a safe prison. It shields us from the risk of failure by letting us linger in words instead of deeds, but it also robs us of growth because every moment spent complaining is a moment stolen from courage. Now, let's ask the deeper question. Why do we complain at all? Plato once compared the human soul to a charioteer pulled by two horses, one noble, the other unruly. The noble horse strives toward truth and harmony. The unruly horse pulls toward indulgence and chaos. Complaining is the voice of the unruly horse. It is the refusal to accept reality, the tantrum of the ego, demanding that life bend to its will. But reality does not bend. It simply is. And every time you say, "This should not be happening," you place yourself in conflict with the very nature of existence. You become like a swimmer, thrashing against the current of a river, exhausting yourself, yet going nowhere. Here lies the paradox. The more you resist reality through complaint, the more trapped you become by it. Think about the times you've replayed an argument in your mind, retelling the story to others, amplifying your sense of injustice. Did it free you, or did it bind you tighter to the very thing you wanted to escape? Complaining is a form of self-sabotage. It feels like release, but it is actually chains. But if complaining is poison, what is the antidote? The answer is deceptively simple: gratitude. This is not about false positivity or ignoring problems. Gratitude is the art of noticing what is still good, even in the midst of difficulty. Neuroscience shows us that gratitude rewires the brain, the same way complaining does, but in the opposite direction. Where complaining strengthens neural pathways of dissatisfaction, gratitude strengthens those of appreciation and possibility. It is the act of changing the glasses you wear. Suddenly, the grey world reveals its colors. But gratitude does more than reframe the mind. It recalibrates the soul. The Taoists taught that harmony comes from flowing with life, not against it. Gratitude is precisely this flow, an acceptance of the present moment, even if imperfect. As Lao Tzu wrote, "When you realize there is nothing lacking, the whole world belongs to you." This is not poetic exaggeration. It is an existential shift, when you stop saying, "This shouldn't be," and start saying, "Even here, something is good." Your entire reality changes. So here is a challenge. The next time you feel the urge to complain, pause, take 3 slow breaths, and instead of feeding the complaint, whisper one thing you are grateful for. It might feel trivial at first, but over time, this practice reshapes you, because here is the secret. You cannot complain and be grateful at the same time. One excludes the other, and whichever one you choose, you amplify. Let me leave you with this thought. Life will always bring suffering. You cannot control that, but you can control whether you suffer twice, once in reality, and once again, in your own words. Every complaint is a seed you plant in the soil of your existence. Plant enough of them, and you will reap bitterness, but choose gratitude, and you will reap abundance. Nietzsche once said, "He who has a why to live can bear almost any how." Gratitude gives you that why. It transforms even pain into meaning, even loss into learning. So ask yourself, what seeds are you planting with your words today? Because your life tomorrow is growing from the words you speak today.